All right, we are live. We're recording. It is Sunday, the 16th of August, and we are together here again, the Divine Feminine Roundtable. So before we begin, I'm super stoked about this conversation we're going to have today. Before we begin, let's get up into our hearts. Everyone that's listening, please get into your hearts. Imagine that the breath is flowing in and out of your heart space, and then I want you to make a sincere attempt to activate a feeling of gratitude and compassion for everyone here on the table and anyone that is listening. And let's hold that just for 1 minute. And bring it back. Now that we are anchored in the glorious heart, I'm stoked today. We have with us Violet, who is from Arizona and has facilitated many sacred plant ceremonies. And we also have Nirvana from Authentically Me joining us. And of course, the original Divine Feminine Roundtable ladies. So, you know, if I had 3 words to describe the energy that we are in right now, I would say holy effing shit. Because it feels like it's on in a big way. And it feels in many ways kind of like a purge. A huge purge is happening within you know, us individually and also collectively. So we're going to get into plant medicine in a little bit and how that can help facilitate your own journey of releasing the shadow aspects from within that hold us back from reaching our highest potential. But first we need to tackle a subject that is obviously very near and dear to our hearts as we hold space for our sisters and our brothers. Chrissy, I'm going to hand it over to you because you've got something pressing that you wanted to address this morning. So let's get into that before we dig deeper into our conversation.
Thank you. Well, it's to do with, I don't know if anybody has noticed the calling out of Lightworkers at the moment, or Lightworkers. There's been several quite known people recently that have been accused of abusive behavior. And what's happening is we see a big wave of people attacking this light worker. And what I'm not seeing very clearly is that the real willingness to look at what's really happening here. So you either have, it seems that there's 2 factions, one that is standing by the light worker and the other ones that are standing by the accusers. But what I'm missing is a real integrity in the whole process. Because it isn't one side or the other, it's both. And I really want to make a point about that. And rather than me talking about these people that have been called out, I want to use myself as an example. Because what you're saying, Paula, it's true that it is a very big purge happening. And that means that also our own stuff that hasn't come out and that we haven't been called out on is coming out right now. And my tendency to see the good in everyone is equals seeing the good in myself. But there's a danger that lies in that. And the danger of wanting to see only the good in someone and in yourself is that the shadow can grow into epic proportions. And I often talk about, you know, oh, light workers, it's all love and light and we should go in the shadow. But in the last few weeks, I've noticed how I've been called out on my own shadows, and I wasn't aware of how sneaky these shadows still were. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I did do a post on it on Facebook, but basically when I'm under stress or under pressure, hey, Laura's coming. Awesome. When I'm under stress or under pressure, hello.
Morning.
I can really surprise myself with my own bitchiness, basically. And I like myself a lot when I'm not under pressure. I think I'm quite fun to hang out with. But boy, what happens when I'm seriously like on a busy film set where everything needs to be done right now and there's lots of pressure on me. There's a difference between being, knowing what you want and being able to communicate that, or being outright unpleasant to work with, and there's moments where I'm actually unpleasant to work with. And I thought that I'd worked through all of that. I thought, oh my God, I've done so much work on myself. I know that I can hold myself well now in any situation. And yet on set, on this big shoot that we had a few days ago, I was just unpleasant again. And so my main camera guy, the director of photography, he called me out and said that he needed to have a real breather after that working day and needed to go out and go for a long walk, because he said he felt violated being in my presence. I then entered a conversation with him and I said, yes, thank you for calling me out on that. I know that that's true. And I had hoped that I had, grown from my past experiences, and it looks like the shadow is still there. And I basically completely owned up to my part in that. But it wasn't enough for him. It was like, yeah, that's nice that you own up to your part and that you can say sorry, but what if you do it again? And that opened this whole big thing for me where I was like, actually, this is really fascinating, because there's so many steps to clearing one's shadow. And, owning up is only step one. The other step is like, what are you going to do with that? And what process are you going to enter to clear it? Which is interesting. We're talking about plant medicine later on, because we can shed some light on that. But having used myself as an example, I just sometimes wonder what accusers actually really want, So when you come to the point that you own up to your part and it's not enough for them and they want to see you hang, I'm not saying that my cameraman did, but I've seen it with other people, I've seen, for instance, Tom Lesher, Kaipacha, he very bravely owned up to what he'd done. And he said, yes, most of what the people accuse me of is true. But there are some distortions in these stories. And then boom, the next wave of accusations came, how dare he not own up to his part, and, saying that there's, that there's distortions in the story. And I was like, so what do these excuses want? Obviously they want to have acknowledgement of it, which happens with some of these people. These people acknowledge, yes, this is not okay what I've done. But how can the accusers also start looking at their part and their contribution to this, rather than wanting to see someone hang? So I don't know if I'm making much sense in this, but what I'm really trying to say is that when are we finally going to really go into integrity and look at the fact that it's a dance between two opposite sides, and the only way we can clear it is if these sides truly own up to their contribution in the whole thing. And I'm currently absolutely not seeing that. Yeah.
I think what you're actually referring to, Chrissy, is we're talking about the bigger aspect of forgiveness. Like, does that person that is accusing another of doing something wrong, what do they need in order to forgive fully? To your point, right? Do you need to be in purgatory for 1,000 years?
Yeah, but it's also looking at your own side, at your own contribution. Like these women that accuse, for instance, Kaipacha of sexual abuse, you know, when you read the story, it's like, wow, they were, you know, like, it's like, where's your share in this? He didn't rape you, you know. There were stages beforehand, you know, that made you grow closer to this person, and you ended up sleeping with this person. So what he did was, yes, he did abuse his role as a spiritual teacher to some degree, but what I want to see is, what did you do in order to give him that playground?
Yeah,
And unless we see that, yeah, sorry.
I'm actually
finish that. I wanted to comment. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Ivana.
I thought that Christianne was still finishing her sentence. Is it all right? Is it all right, Tara, if I can respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have personal experience in when my journey started around 2000, 2001, when I went into what is called Temple Beautiful. It's American-based here in South Africa. And one of my main things was that doesn't matter what it takes, I needed to be healed. Coming from a child sexual abuse and physical abuse background, it was that was my biggest mission. So when I started this journey, and there was this spiritual teacher who channeled all sorts of entities. You know, when I say entities, it can also be false light, like the Ascended Masters, Joshua, you know what I mean, Jesus. And then one session, he said, come and see me so we can do a channeling and we can see what is needed for you to be healed. And in that session, he said, what would you do? Like, what would it take for you? What would you do to have this, to fix this, to be free of this? And of course, at that time, I would do anything, because I still believed that I was screwed up, I was messed up, I was a broken person, I needed to fix myself. And so, and that is how he started to manipulate the situation in a very subtle way. And it took me a while, because now by this time, 2001, I might be 34, I think, I'm not sure now. I kept on experiencing my abuser in my life from my childhood. Doesn't matter where I work, I would have this harasser or harassment or sexual advances or whatever. And I kept on thinking it was something that I did. And after this event with this spiritual teacher, which really started to, I started to hate myself, because now even my spiritual teacher was abusing me or harassing me or seeming to get in there. And one day I was lying on my bed and I realized that the energy which I was carrying, the victim energy, the energy of the abuser, I saw it like tentacles. As soon as I came across the abuser and that tentacles came, the two wanted to meet up together and wanted to play. Because I haven't transcended my victimness from my childhood, and the abuser was still playing its role for me, that part of me that was abused. And so the two needed to connect and play. So once I realized what was happening, once I got understanding that it is as much my responsibility and my doing on a much deeper subconscious level than it is the perpetrator, I could then start to recognize what was happening, and I could recognize these people in my life as they were sort of passing by. They had no more entry into my physical being to do that specific, to validate my victimness, if I could say that.
Absolutely. I call that the Velcro effect, because everybody has hooks and loops. You know, Velcro, the sticky stuff, and on one side there's loads of tiny weeny little loops, and on the other side tiny weeny little hooks, and it's what it makes it stick together, and you can use it for cushions and stuff. And our energy bodies are like that. Our blueprints are like these stuff, and it can be this lifetime, other lifetimes, and even our genetic parent, ancestral, inherited, unresolved stuff. So it can be passed down lineages, and I literally see this in people's blueprint
and it's passed down like a baton in a relay race, waiting for that next person in the line, in the family, the next latest person, you know, the newest generation, to heal and resolve those trigger points. And so we are attracted, you know, to the exact opposite equal match of us. And sometimes we see things, don't we, through really small lenses of, like, you know, this person's bad and that person's innocent. And it is a much, much bigger picture than that, as you said, Nirvana. And all of us have little hoops where somebody else's hooks can get into us, and then we're tugged and we're triggered and we're like, we be the victim. And we also similarly have little hooks that we throw out to other people and say, you're the bad person, you did this, and everybody's doing that to each other. And actually, the whole process that I use, that I Love You Me method, actually undoes all those hooks and loops and neutralizes both sides, so that then you can come together in a love resonance and the real truth of what's there, and it dissolves all the stuff. And in my experience, people, yes, they need to be acknowledged, like you said, Chrissy, but people want their pain acknowledged. And the problem is, nobody knows our pain like we do. So we almost demand it of somebody else. You know, well, how do I know you won't do it again? I'm hurt, I'm wounded, and I'm making you responsible, like that guy, bless his soul, making you responsible for his own wound. And he wants you to acknowledge and validate his hurt and see it, because only in fully acknowledging and recognizing that hurt can we begin to heal. No healing can happen until that full acknowledgement has happened. And see, he's kind of inadvertently, without realizing, asking you to do that for him. What's more valuable, in my opinion, is having the self-awareness and actually the self-love to say, hold on a minute, I'm in pain, my compass is off, I'm not feeling good, therefore I'm going to love myself enough to bring myself back into harmony and unhook my hook from somebody else and making it their responsibility, and I'm going to feel my own pain instead of making somebody else responsible for healing it and feeling it for me. And fully acknowledge and validate one's own suffering, because no one else, like your story, Nirvana, or any one of our stories, I know some of you have incredibly, you know, painful stories, like no one else can validate that experience the way you can. No one else knows those exact pain points and exactly how it felt. And we have this beautiful power of empathy, of insight, of compassion, of touch, of a conversation that we can have with those hurting parts of ourselves. And, you know, I'm a big believer in, you know thyself, love thyself, heal thyself. And then you can make peace with somebody else, because once you've seen your own shit, then you can say to someone, I fully get what I did, and now I truly am sorry. And they can do the same back to you. And you can have that very loving, healing conversation, and it's not that difficult.
And that takes courage though, right? It takes incredible courage to be able to look at your own stuff. So
yes, it does. Or it could just take love.
It still takes courage though.
It does indeed, absolutely.
Love is required across the board, right? Like
it does take courage. Because a lot of people don't want to admit their own shit, because it's, you know, people feel bad about themselves. And they want to make, you know, the reason people put other people down is because it makes them feel better. You put someone else down, it immediately puts you higher. And then you can do a superiority trip on them. I'm more 5D than you are. I'm more spiritual than you are. I'm more loving than you are, whatever. And it's just all bullshit. Like we don't need to put anybody else down.
And that's one of the biggest things that when you're on your spiritual journey, you have to be aware of a spiritual ego, because that's exactly what you're talking about. But I want to go back to what Chrissy was talking about in the example that Nirvana shared. In the last roundtable we did last week, we had Joanne join us from Australia, and she was talking about childhood trauma. And I didn't want to share this online, and it's so bizarre because I didn't want to share this last week in case my mom heard it. And my mom is actually in this house with me today. I'm in a completely different space doing it. So my 81-year-old mom is in the other room. And what I had shared, actually, after the call, talking about childhood trauma and how this is like psychology 101, how it affects us when we're adults, going back to the whole victimhood mentality. When I was a baby, they used to call me, my beloved mother, I love her so much, she's in the other room, used to call me Paula the Baller, because I would cry so much as a baby. And, you know, there is old age teachings that, you know, if you cuddle your baby too much, you build a rod for your own back, they won't sleep properly, whatever. Fast forward to being an adult, I realized and recognized, because I actually had an experience in my the 8th session of ayahuasca about a past life, and we'll get into that in a bit. But as an adult, I now recognize that because when I was a little girl, a baby, I'm a little baby, I'm not walking, I'm maybe sitting up, didn't get my needs met when I was crying. I get very frustrated as an adult when I'm not heard, when I'm trying to speak and I'm not being heard, not, you know what I mean, being silenced. So the gentleman that you're talking about, Chrissy, you gave him an incredible gift of a trigger, has likely nothing to do with you. It's something else. Oh, it is totally to do with you. No, but you know what I mean? And the same thing with, go ahead, there's so many people want to speak right now.
I know, whoever is first.
Why don't you go first, Violet, then Chrissy, then Magenta.
Okay. I do a lot of work with trauma and a lot of trauma therapy. And I think that one thing that I point out to people in my therapy a lot is that there are essentially, at least in the way that I put it forth, and I'm sure other people have different ways of speaking about this, but it's two main parts of ourselves. We have a biocomputer that we're working with, and then we have the expression of ourselves that's coming through that mainframe, essentially. And when we're small, like you were talking about, Paula, when you're little, your biocomputer is being continuously programmed from the age of 0 through 5 years old. And at that point, your biocomputer is almost completely programmed to the point where all of those programming pieces are going to be really a big part of yourself as you mature into an adult. But you're very emotionally driven through that process. And so when we start to hit like the age of 18, 19, 20, we come into our 20s, that mainframe, it starts to take over. We call that adulting. We start to get involved in the adult processes, in the everyday, you know, matrix, essentially. And we have to run the mainframe and our emotions at the same time. And so I think, and the reason I wanted to mention that is because one thing that I see about, you know, being in a position of a light worker, whatever it is, you know, a spiritual guidance person, if you make mistakes and you get called out, you're going to be facing a lot of people that may be less emotionally or less spiritually developed, and you're going to have to be more mature, and you're going to have to express a better example for them to follow, because a lot of people, we have to recognize that people are still developing through, not, you know, that mainframe is very problematic, and especially if it's been traumatized or if there's been a lot of issues and stuff setting up that mainframe, there's a lot to unravel. And that's a lot why I work with plant medicines, because they help us do that. But I think it's really important to recognize that when a person is responding, it really has a lot to do with how much their presence is responding or how much their mainframe is responding, as to whether or not, you know, if you're going to react to that response. I think it's really important, especially as a spiritual advisor or, you know, somebody who people follow, to understand, to have an understanding for that, so that you know how to respond in those situations. Are you guys following what I'm saying?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chrissy, did you want to add before we go to Magenta, or?
No, I think, no, I'm okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So I'd just like to say, Chrissy, I saw you kind of working, if you like, when we met in Glastonbury. I didn't obviously see the person you are when you're on a film set, but I very, very strongly noticed a complete shift in your energy just by one sentence you said. And as soon as I saw that shift in your energy, which is a complete shift from the Chrissy I know as a colleague on here, a co-divine feminine and a friend, I saw the instant shift into the kind of person you are when you are working. And it was simply the case that we'd all been hanging around, you'd all been waiting for me, and when I finally got there, and then you just shifted and said, come on then everyone, let's get started, or something like that. Now when I looked at your shift in energy, I then saw the person that you would be when you are working. And I have to say, I felt great respect for that person that you were, because you have the ability to shift from a flowing, divine, feminine, beautiful, soft woman into a professional worker. And what I'm seeing psychically is not you being horrible, it's you getting the job done. You are a film producer and you have to be strict with these people. You have to organize so much all at once. And I respect you for that. And I think the person here, this guy, was triggered, and I don't think he liked, I don't know him, but energetically I feel he didn't like being told what to do by a woman, and he was triggered by his own past issues. Now, obviously I didn't see you. Maybe you did get a little bit sort of out of alignment and maybe somewhat stressed, but the person I saw in Glastonbury and what I could see beyond that one sentence was professional. And I respected you for that.
Yeah, and I want to echo that. I don't see like Magenta does, but that was one of the reasons why I reached out to you a year ago, Chrissy. And no offense to the brothers out there, there are some men that have a hard time with very strong, independent, articulate, elegant women in positions of, I need you to stand here, you got to go over there, we got to get this done, because you're on a budget, right, Chrissy? To Magenta's point, you're on a budget, and time wasted is money burned.
Thank you so deeply for that. I really, wow, that's amazing to hear that. And what it now makes me think of is that this camera person and like other people have approached me because they've seen me on series or films, and they will approach me and say, wow, I've seen your film or series, I want to work with you. And then they have a specific idea of what I'm like. And I'm almost thinking, you know, like maybe next time I should say, look, I am not the person you see on the series or the film. Like I'm actually quite bitchy. And Magenta, yes, if I'm aligned, that bossiness is appropriate. But when I'm too tired, it becomes kind of inappropriate bossiness. So I do take ownership for that. And he would have been triggered by that. And he needs to work on his trigger. And I need to, you know, work with my shadow. But yeah. It's finding it's what my point is. It's like our qualities can express themselves in a positive and a negative way, and we need to be able to see when we cross the line. And that's also my message to other light workers when they're being called out. You know, rather than immediately defend themselves, just have a look at like what is in there for you that you can do something with. You know, and the accused is the same thing. What is in here for you? You know, do you really want to see someone hang? Is that what you actually want? Because if you do, then you're not going to get a solution and you're not going to get the peace that you crave ever. You know, so how can we come to the table and own our parts?
I love you, Chrissy, and I've known you for many years, and I love your bitch, and you're never horrible to anybody. You're not actually mean and deliberately nasty to people to hurt them. No, I don't see that bitch in the same way that you do, and I've experienced that, and I've known you for a very long time, and I absolutely love your inner bitch. In fact, she's good fun, and you're not actually mean to people. I just want to say that.
And why would we use the bitch word? Why can't it be you're just very direct? You're very direct and articulate. You're like a project manager.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nina.
Yeah, I've been having a lot come up around this word bitch, because my path is that I've always been very careful of not being a bitch. And I was in many ways, as someone who had a lot of victimization as a child and kept repeating this cycle of victimization and prosecutor, I would be also like a magnet to people that I was seeking to reflect to me my empowerment, because I couldn't see it yet. And so by giving my power outside of myself constantly, I was attracting the parasitic people who often did come in the form of light workers. One of the biggest lessons that I learned was from a woman who showed up as a light worker in my life to start healing the sexual abuse I'd had, that trauma. And her entire approach from the beginning was, my fiance at the time was a multimillionaire and she wanted him. So because I was very happy to give my power away to her, she would just tell him everything that I was sharing with her, and she manipulated the entire situation, and they're married now. So, you know, that was like an incredible lesson of, wait a second, just because someone is a light worker or someone is in this position, are they truly? And I was in denial of my own psychic abilities. I was in denial because I wanted to see the light and the love in everyone. And I do see the light and the love in everyone. But the truth is that a lot of people that are presenting themselves as light workers just truly are not. If they're in service to self and they are not in service to source, they're going to come into your life and they're going to take advantage of you. And your lesson in that is, why am I attracting this? So yes, we all have to look at our shadow piece in that. The shadow work never ends. I don't think it ever ends as a light worker. And if you're a light worker and you're holding space for other people and you're doing trauma work with other people, you are going to be honestly doing your own work all the time. It does not end. And oftentimes my clients that come in are an incredible reflection of exactly the initiatory process that I just went through, or the thing that I'm looking at. I love that because it's the universe is speaking to us in all these different mirror reflections. And the other piece that I wanted to talk about is that, you know, this word bitch, it's like I've been terrified my whole life of being called a bitch. And as a result of it, I was in denial also of my own, I'm going to say, inner man, that warrior inside of me, my own divine masculine. And by suppressing it and by hiding it, by not seeing it, even though it was actually there, I kept attracting men that would end up being eventually very threatened by it because it would come out. And they would be like, who are you? You were like this little pretty princess, you know, in the beginning, Miss Flowy and all this. And what is this? And I was like, well, this is who I am. I'm a lot of things, you know? So in those aspects, those men would start being very intimidated, and that would turn into, well, then I'm going to psychologically get you to doubt yourself because now I'm really threatened by your inner masculine, which is actually much more developed than mine. And that's been a huge realization for me recently, is until we are owning our own divine king and queen and doing the shadow work for our inner man and our inner woman, and owning that and integrating that into that tantric union marriage and saying, wow, sometimes I use the king aspect of me, sometimes I use the queen. We're going to keep attracting the reflections of exactly what we need to see in the development of that relationship. And it does not, that word bitch is, I've been like, I'm letting it go. It's not, that's a label of judgment on someone who is in their power. And that, yes, there's times that we abuse that, but that just means that you are serving yourself and you're not serving source. We don't need to label it bitch.
Thank you for that, Nina. That you really brought up a big thing by sharing that, because, you know, when we present ourselves to people, you know, and having that fear of showing the inner bitch, sometimes we can give, you know, too much of one side of ourselves first, the kind, patient, receiving, that side. And sometimes I wonder, maybe the reason why all this mayhem happens is because we're not allowing to show ourselves in full balanced state, you know, straight from the start, you know. And as a result of it, maybe that bitch aspect comes out like quite abruptly and out of control. So maybe it's an invitation for us to start allowing ourselves to say straight away, you know, be straight up from the moment, from the word go.
And I want to add to that it's because we have been born into a world that is aligned, or was aligned, with fear. We're moving out of that now, but we want to belong. I want you to like me. If you don't like me, then how will you listen to me? Because if you think about it, a lot of people don't like to hear the truth. And the truth might be uncomfortable. Or knowing something, you don't like what you know, but you know it. So, I mean, I've even had situations with my husband recently, and he's like, oh, I wouldn't say that. And I'm like, but it's true. It's the truth. So how do you sugarcoat the truth? With lies so that somebody feels more comfortable? Right? Like I think you're absolutely right. This is about who are you truly in your own fullness.
I if it's okay to speak really quick, I just want to say I think that it also bears rhetoric is something that I feel like is really damaging and difficult to get through, and I think that it is being thrown everywhere right now in this really crazy time of illusion. And I think it's really important to undress these words and to like Nina just did, and to sort of get to the bottom of, you know, why is this insult? What even, I mean, a bitch is a female dog. So how did we get here? You know, how did we clothe this word and all of this stuff so that when you call me that, I have all these feelings about myself, or, you know what I mean? Or all these feelings are coming at me. So I think it's important to undress those words like Nina did, and really get to the bottom of that, and to say, like, you know, even I don't like the word because I don't agree with it. Like, I'm not a female dog. I don't think anyone else is. But what people are is they're assertive, and people don't like women that are assertive sometimes, or, you know, they're standing their ground, and men don't like women that stand their ground sometimes, or, you know, and those things are, we need to, I think that we're all responsible for changing, you know, changing the words and changing the definitions of those things.
Yeah, and I would just add that women don't like women standing their ground either. They can be intimidated by a strong, independent woman who's not gonna take shit from Sherlock.
And also what I'd like to add is, you know, we are multifaceted and multi-passionated. So why do we shy away from that part of us that can really step in and stand in our power? When I was running my festivals, and I remember exactly what you were saying, Christianne, that there were moments that I would absolutely feel like just go away, you know, like that feeling of I'm running this spiritual festival, and I was amazed at how intolerant I was becoming by some of the storeholders, which were thinking that they could move that line and move that line. This is your space, or this is your time slot, or this is your whatever it was. And this is the thing with women doing, you know, powerful stuff, is that they immediately think they can push that line further and further. So you have to step into that part. That ego part we have in this incarnation is very important for us to do and stand in our power, that when we need to push back, it's not a shadow. Like for me, I don't see it as a shadow part. It is very important to step into that ego strength, and to then take action in what we need to do. So that's just what I wanted to say, and being multifaceted.
Go ahead, Laura. You're on mute.
Okay, well, first off, good morning, everybody. Yeah, you know, how I'm kind of interpreting everything without fully knowing the story or kind of what's happened, and just kind of trying to keep up a little bit, just because I follow all of you and I try and catch your posts, and seeing Chrissy's post, you know, sort of after hearing somebody else say something about somebody else, right, that you had mentioned. You said, oh, you know, what do I do about the fact that somebody else is telling me that so-and-so, you know, is being abusive? And then all of a sudden, like, you're put in that situation, or whatever the word was. And the thing is, it's very much about what's healing about the feminine is, and I don't even want to put it on gender, is this sort of passive, all loving, light and love, and just being the nurturer, and just, it's like the fire has to rise, the boldness, the warrior energy, and it might come out a little bit rough around the edges. It's almost like it's been somewhat dormant and sort of shoved into the background, and the fire is, or the extra force of character is to compensate for being undermined, and the wisdom body being almost ridiculed throughout history, of just sort of this, like, or even this projection of what some men do, and I don't want to make it about gender too much or generalizations, but oh, you're just being sensitive, or oh, you're just being this, all these excuses and projections in order to avoid the greater intention. And the greater intention doesn't have time to deliver messages with perfect grace and ease, because we're in a major critical time, and the urgency is so strong in people that it's almost volcanic. And a lot of the aspects on an astrological level are very volatile and very in need of like making sure that what has to be done is going to be done. And it's not always going to be delivered in a way that's pleasing to others, but if they can really see the intention and they can really understand what's at stake, and that a lot of this has a mixture of a little bit of tough love, or like everybody needs to just like sit down and let me do my thing, let me do what I'm here to do, and just please just like cut me slack if it's not coming out, you know, the best way, to stop with like the petty personality attacks, and to really look at the bigger picture. And like, because when we get caught up in the entanglements of, oh, you should do it this way, or you're doing it that way, it's like, yes, that's important for creating harmony and cooperation and teamwork, you know, to make those minor adjustments. But when the focus begins to get overly distracted with just almost like losing the bigger picture and the necessity, and it can't just be like, oh no, it's okay, I can understand that you're you know, it's like there's a lack of understanding. And so then it's like you have to like fight off the projection, and yeah, the word bitch and all this and that, it's like, it's righteous. I mean, I created the page Return of the Divine Feminine in 2011, and I got so much criticism for even just being loving, like something was not kind about something that I was doing, and I got a lot of criticism. Then I said, you know what, it might as well be, instead of Return of the Divine Feminine, Return to the Pissed Off Bitch. And I'm not talking bitches and female dog, as in boundaries. I'm gonna do what I came here to do. Do not undermine me. You want to get in my way and create an entanglement that doesn't need to be there, you know? It's far more productive to say, I'm having a hard time with your tone or the way that you're doing it. Can we just have, you know, a breakthrough conversation and look towards ways that we can productively communicate with each other? But I absolutely respect why you are being the way that you are, because it's an appropriate response to the insanity that's going on the planet. So how on earth can it come out just like pleasing? It's not meant to be pleasing right now. I mean, there's a certain level of harshness and intensity in order to get the job done, and people just have to cut the light workers some slack and stop with the character profiling. It's a lot of the new age thought police that it's just like, stop trying to make everything politically correct. Everybody's offended by everything. Can we just take a deep breath and look at the larger picture and just see that a force is moving through a lot of people right now to safeguard the planet? Okay. And if it's a little bit messy, get over it, because it's like, this is what needs to be done. And I don't want to say very few women, but not a whole lot of people on earth are willing to hold that torch and do whatever it takes to achieve the goal of human sovereignty and lifting us out of this enslavement and being bound to these, you know, lower realms. It's like the masculine has to just really stand back and say, okay, let them do their thing, and within the male too, to just get activated by it and let it be, so it can do what it needs to do, and then just fine tune it by just saying, okay, let's find better ways to communicate so that nobody is you know, getting overly, you know, offended by the intensity. Let's just all know that our heart's in the right place and not overly obsessed with the delivery not being perfect. It's like, it's kind of like when you're delivering a great message, you're trying to put out a fire. It's like, why would you criticize the character of somebody that's going into the house to put out the fire? You know, get out of the way and let them put out the freaking fire, you know? And if they cuss along the way while they're busting, you know, into that house to save lives, it's like, get over it, you know? Stop criticizing, you know, the petty part of it, because it's absolutely distracting. And if you can't tell that somebody's heart's in the right place, then, you know, it's on them to develop their intuition a little bit more, to create room and space and honoring of this particular role. It takes a lot of freaking guts in this world right now to be a powerful woman willing to do what you're doing. And all of us, you know, and I get a lot of criticism too. And it's just like, you know what, I don't need to be liked. My love is greater than me needing approval. If you can't see the greater intention of the intensity of love and commitment and devotion that we all carry, then it's really not your problem, I think. But being receptive enough to saying, okay, I'll figure out a better way to communicate. But there's no wrong here, just because it might not have come across well. It's like, get over it, everybody. Too sensitive. You know, men are going through a huge growth period to let go of being in charge, being the authority. And that old paradigm is ending, and some men are incredibly uncomfortable with that. Anyway.
Thank you so much, Laura. You are always wording things so amazingly. Wow, thank you so much. And what it felt like on the day on set, you know, it's like we're making a film about, you know, like being the voice of Gaia, basically, you know, and I'm feeling very, very strongly channeling whenever I'm on set doing things like, how can I express that voice the most truthfully and the most directly hitting as I can. And so when I have a day with lots of extras and actors on set, it actually feels like it's like I'm on the battlefield. And I feel like to be attacked about the way I not politically, you know, communicate when I'm on the battlefield, it's just like, wow, what a bad timing, you know? So that's, you know, that's in my own defense, you know, because I'm dealing with the moment as it is. It's like, boom, 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 this. And then to hear like, yeah, you're being bossy and you're being this, it feels so, yeah, how do you call that? I don't know the word, but you know what
unbalanced.
I mean. It makes me feel defeated, you know. It's just like, wow, I've just been on the battlefield like doing this, and now I'm being judged on something really, like, to me seemingly not important in, you know, in the bigger picture of what we're going through right now. Exactly what Laura was saying.
Yeah. Being.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's about being. It's like, why are you being like that? How come you're being that way? And then Chrissy, you're like, I don't really know how else to be right now. I've got a job to do. And right, go ahead, Nina. Like, yeah.
I was just going to say, because I've been mostly on the other side of the camera. And so what you were describing, Chrissy, is exactly what directors do. You know, when you're in a big musical production, when you're with a whole cast and there's tons of extras, and do you think anybody was worried about my feelings? No, never. I mean, I'll just be straight up honest. They could have cared less about my feelings. The interesting thing about that, though, is that they were all men. And I can almost guarantee that if you had been a man directing in that manner, nobody would have said a word to you, because it would have been seen as natural and acceptable, because that's what we've been used to seeing in this 3D, you know, matrix system, but we're changing it up now. So when you're in your power, it is going to threaten men that are not in their power, in their own feminine and masculine power. And that's not your fault. We can have compassion for that, because a lot of men that I see and come to me, you know, really their deepest wound is they feel so disconnected from the feminine. And they all have mother issues. They have extreme trauma, and they don't know how to heal it. They are completely overwhelmed by these feelings. And that's not an excuse, but it's that in that moment, you weren't Chrissy, you were probably his mother. Yeah. That's how I see it. Anyways, the projection, he was like, wow, there's my mother, and who, you know, didn't give me the love that I wanted and needed. And I don't know how to give that to myself. So I'm really angry at you because I'm trying to resolve this. That's not caused by you being in your power.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, that like when a person is hurt, a lot of times we want to feel like we're hurt by something, but when you really start to examine those feelings and break it down, you find wounds inside of yourself that have gotten triggered by a circumstance or part of the environment. And to the point of the beginning, where of the beginning of the conversation about people taking responsibility, I think that's where the bottom line really is.
Yeah. My mum always used to say, sorry, Chrissy.
Very, very briefly, just another thing, you know, it's like an example is, I said from the beginning of the shoot to the crew, I said, I'm a timekeeper, and I expect everyone that if I say 10 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock. And a lot of the time this didn't happen, you know, people would rock up 10 minutes late or whatever. So at one point I started to, you know, make a bit of an issue about it, you know, say there's just no excuse, you know, like if I say 10, it's 10, you know, because otherwise all the other things are late and we get stressed on set. And stuff like that was considered like not nice, you know, that I was, you know, being the one that was making everything difficult, you know. So it's also to do with when we speak our truth and set boundaries, you know. I'm very clear cut. If somebody says that to me, you know, like if, oh, you're working with me, cool, but this is how I work, so this is it, then I expect that person to have a go at me if I'm not respecting that.
Yeah,
absolutely. And just, I think, summing it up, everything what we're saying, my mum always used to say, when you point a finger at someone, 3 point back at you. Now, what was always really interesting is the people that say, when you point a finger at someone else, 3 point back at you, it's one thing to say that and notice that, and it's another thing to actually walk your own talk and do it. And I think that's the difference. Because it's easy to say this shit. It's been written in books and everybody's memorized it, and there's quotes all over Instagram, and it's really easy to come up with this stuff, you know, and read the books. But it's another thing, and, you know, understanding intellectually, it's another thing to actually humble and go there. And anytime we notice ourselves, and this is for everybody, going, oh, that person's triggering me, and it's there, just go, hold on, this is my trigger. This is my wound, and I'm not going to dump my shit on that person because they're dealing with their own stuff. That's not fair. We don't know what somebody else is dealing with. No one understands what you're dealing with on that set, Chrissy, or what Kai Patch is dealing with. And he's a good friend of mine. I love the guy. I know what he's like, you know. But you don't need to dump your shit and say that's his fault or your fault. We can go, yeah, I got myself into a situation. I'm feeling something that doesn't feel in harmony, doesn't feel aligned with me. Let me be curious. Let me be self-loving. Let me just be conscious, because that's what this is all about. Whether it's masculine or feminine or them or me, it's just becoming conscious and having that self-realization. This is what we're doing on this planet right now, is realizing who we truly are. And we can break it down into all these lots of different things and different parts, but really it just comes back to that. It's like, who am I? And all of these things in the world are here to give us a reflection, to point us back so that we can see and know and love ourselves. And for me, it's kind of nice just to keep it real simple. So if everyone can just remember this, trigger finger, and then you shoot someone else down, you're going to shoot yourself back 3 times more. Stop doing it.
what a great segue for the purge, because it feels really like a purge of emotion. If you, to your point, to everybody's point, if you are triggered by anything at all that is upsetting you, it's something that you need to look at within yourself. What is in me that has that vibration on board? So it's about the purge. And I was thinking last night, you know, about prior to us getting together today, I know Magenta, you've done, the 9 have come through and done a channeling, I believe it was a year ago or so, on ayahuasca and that hormone. And so I'm super stoked about transitioning now into sacred plant medicine with ayahuasca, mushroom ceremonies, and even utilizing cannabis for expanding consciousness. And I was pondering this last night. I've only done 10. Violet's been part of over 100, I think she had shared with me. And I thought I was a hero going through that 10 times in my own journey, my goodness. And I remember the first ceremony, which would be, I guess, the 6th one, was all about, I had no problem purging. For those that are listening, if you don't know anything about ayahuasca, I originally thought the purge, which is vomiting and the back door as well, I thought it was food, toxic food, but it's actually emotional toxins, not only this lifetime, but past lifetimes. And the first one was all very, it was putrid. It was like worms and synthetic, and it was like poison, and the colors were like putrid and pukey. And I remember in ceremony, I was like, where's mother? I was demanding, where's the real? Where's mother? Where's the natural? Where's the organic? I was denying this stuff that I was being shown. And in the second ceremony, I was shown that it was a passage. This purge was a passage that we had to walk through. because it would be this incredible light and the most incredible colors, and then it would go dark, and then it would be these beautiful vibrant lights, and it would be like, oh my God, I'm in touch with God directly. And then it would go dark, and then I knew I have to walk this path. So I'm gonna like just leave it there, and then maybe Violet, I'm gonna pass the baton to you, and let's dig into sacred plant medicine and the incredible gift it can provide in revealing what needs to be healed within our own being.
Yes, thank you, Paula. That was actually a really good opening and a really great description of your ayahuasca experience as far as the purge is concerned, and that point of confusion inside of the medicine journey where, you know, there's that part of you that's just like almost just desperate to make sure that you're connecting with the divine. And it's really difficult to have all that stuff come up inside of yourself and to have to recognize and to have to work through the darkness. And, you know, anywhere there's a light, you'll notice there's also a shadow. Anywhere a light is shining, a shadow is cast. And we can't escape that. And the medicine work for me, and this has probably been the most wonderful thing of my life, because I feel like I lived in a shadow for so long. But it really helps to shine the light so that you can, and it pushes you into those dark spaces inside of yourself so that you can actually start really unraveling that shadow. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself with that, because with ayahuasca is one form of plant medicine that is becoming very, a lot more popular, a lot more utilized right now, especially in the Western world, which to me is great. There's also mushroom, which is an amazing teacher, an excellent plant teacher that can be utilized. And then there's so many other entheogenic plants that are trying, in my opinion, or just have told me and talked to me and trying to come forward in this time to help us with this transition. The plants have talked to me, have shown me things about, Paula, you said a passage for the purge, and it's like the human race is purging. The whole collective is purging. And we've been talking about this all morning. Purging the past, purging the dark ages, purging the whole Kali yugas that we just went through, and unraveling those shadows from our inner self, you know, because shadow touches everybody. There's no person that can escape, you know, having light and shadow inside of themselves. So the plants are really trying to get us to our true self so that we can realize and recognize who we are as a divine being, who we are in the universe, because our eyes here, we can only see such a tiny, you know, less than 1% of the spectrum. So when I feel like we're in the purge and we're in the plant medicine, the struggle is really about attunement. It's about attuning our energy so that we can actually be broken open to see more of that spectrum, to experience more of that spectrum. And I believe that is what's happening when you're in the medicine and you're seeing, you know, those lights and those colors and all of that, the visual aspects that come in, especially I would say with ayahuasca and mushroom. But they're breaking you open and they're tuning you into a vibrational level where you can actually, it opens up your psychic senses more, it opens up your sensitivity more, it opens up your empathy, your compassion, it opens up your own ability to be honest with yourself, you know, and take the responsibility and to take the responsibility of your own triggers and all of that stuff, because it forces you to be responsible. So that's my opening for it. I'm really curious about questions and what people want to know. I have facilitated, like Paula said, over 100 journeys with ayahuasca. I've also facilitated probably 50 or 60 journeys with mushroom with people, and then on my own, a number of them. And then I also work with other entheogens like Blue Lotus, I think is a wonderful plant medicine. I work with cannabis as well. I work with other plants like cacao, rose, lavender. I blend those elements together to create, like for instance, in a mushroom ceremony, there's so many elements in the earth that are very triggering to our human body. And so when we're breaking ourselves open and we're becoming more sensitive in a journey, setting the space is everything. It's everything. You have to really like create that space and create the right kind of vibration. And so, you know, with adding in some of those plants like rose and cacao, those plants will really help to bring that level of space and to help you hold space, and the ancestors will help you and the spirits will help you. But I have found that by adding in some of those other elements, that they really soften the journey for people, and they really help people kind of ease into some of these journeys. But I know it's sort of new too, that not everyone has experienced it. So I'm really so interested in answering questions or dialoguing with you guys.
I did my first mushroom journey. I think it was 2016. I can't remember now. And so I don't like to be out of control. So I don't like alcohol because I don't like what it does to me. Mm-hmm. And when I tried marijuana, I think I was 33, and I had my first trip or being high, and I really was trying everything to get out of it. And so when I used to go to trance parties, I used to take 1 or 2 drags, so it just takes me into that dip. I wouldn't do it anymore. So I was quite surprised when I was called, because apparently it calls you, you know. So it's quite amazing when it was called. When I was called, and within a week I was at a beautiful ceremony with a lady who does these ceremonies. And what I know, that I was so scared of letting go, mm-hmm. you know, of not being able to come back or whatever was going to happen. And it was a very powerful journey, and many things happened during that time. And I know that I sobbed. I've never sobbed so much in my life, and probably the one and only time that I've ever sobbed so much. Then I had 2 American people Airbnb with me, a mother and daughter, and they wanted to do a mushroom journey. So I created the space and had a watcher, and so I decided I'm taking a little bit less because I didn't want to go in so deeply, because you can hardly walk. Right? And that's the one thing I can't like forget, is like how my legs were, you know, and how jelly my legs were. And that experience was for me very painful. Like, it was most excruciating pain. Like, even when I went into contractions with my first child, the pain that I went through in my entire body was unbelievable. And that was the end for me. Like, I won't do another journey because of that incredible pain. But I also want to share with you, in my garden, I have San Pedro growing.
Actually, yeah, San Pedro is amazing, and you might actually find a gentler experience with that plant.
Magenta.
I'd just like to say that, yeah, it's interesting, Nirvana, what you said about being called. You don't actually have to partake of any of the plant substances to be called by the energy of it. So in my very early days of awakening, I used to hang around with several people who would take all sorts of different mind-altering substances, let's say. And I had so many teachings from being with them. I would just touch their hand, hold hands with them, and then go into their experience with them. So it would be a secondhand sort of psychic experience. And I was able to help those people that were having bad experiences. I was able to learn lots about the more sort of negative, demonic side of spirituality. And it taught me also how to open up psychically. So I had a lot of learning there without having to actually take it myself. Mm-hmm. But Paula, yes, you're right. The 9 have brought forward information about mind-altering substances, plant medicines. That's because very early on, when I started releasing the videos, I was asked this question a lot. So I made that video. But when you said we were going to discuss this today, I sat down yesterday evening. I had a lot of questions to ask the 9 last night, and they're just bringing forward small, short responses, not long responses to make a video. So I asked several questions, and in that little sort of Q&A with the 9, I did actually ask them. So I'll just read what they said, if you like. It's only 3 pages. Yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
So, no, I mean 3 tiny pages. It's not a lot of pages. I said, can you speak about ayahuasca and other natural mind-altering substances or plant medicines? So this is what the 9 said. These natural plant medicines, not to be confused with the man-made attempt at an equivalent, are sacred wisdom teaching tools. When the plant medicine is consumed, the energetic memory system within the sacred plant acts as a backup memory system or duplicate doppelganger DNA, and that's very specific to mushrooms, giving messages and information to the one who chooses to step into sacred merge with said plant and consume its magical substance. If one's DNA activation is lower than or less than the DNA configuration or energetic of the plant, then under aligned circumstances, this can be a most helpful and valuable tool. Yet if one's DNA activation is beyond or higher than the DNA configuration or energetic of the plant, then this can create what we may call burnout of the system through double acceleration. As in, the consumer of the plant medicine is already in an accelerated state naturally. The plant medicine creates the double acceleration, which is, if you will, too high, too strong, or too fast for the individual, and creates a crash and burn frequency, rendering natural light speed momentum and quantum convergence charge highly unlikely or impossible. So that means ascension. Therefore, the partaking of the sacred plant medicine is ill-advised for naturally activated individuals. For those who may need a boost, a key, a trigger, or a catalyst, then the plant medicine can be most helpful in both a healing sense and an awakening and activation sense. So I think it's important to just present that perspective as well, because it's not just, you know, for everyone, if you will. It's a tool, and there are many tools, and you can go through all of the stages of awakening and activation and purge without using that tool. And it is important, I think, to present that. And so that's what the 9 said, which is basically a very short version of what they said in the channeling that you spoke about, Paula.
So thank you to the 9. Gotta love the clarity that they bring. I want to share 2 things. One thing, I did my first sacred mushroom ceremony this year, and we had to do it outside. It was in nature with a shaman. We had to wear a black mask to make sure it was an internal journey, because if you take your mask off, you're going to look at the tree for an hour and talk about how beautiful the tree is, the bark, and you know. But what I learned in that one was the importance of neutrality. When I was a little girl, about 2 years old, you know how little girls, when they run and play together, they scream, ah, you know? Well, there was a massive hornet's nest in the house in London, and I was attacked by this hornet's nest. I had stings up my nose, in my ears, in all my girly bits, between my toes, and they had to put lemon and onion on all of the bites to try to get the stings out. Well, that terror of bees has been with me for a long, long time. Except I realized with what the mushrooms showed me, what the plant showed me, was the importance of neutrality and fear. When you have fear on board, the bees are frightened and can feel my fear, and they want to attack me. So now they just are. Like when I see a wasp, it's just like, oh, hello. I don't get frightened anymore. They're just being who they are. And then the second thing I wanted to say about the first time I did, because I think what the 9 are also saying is when you get the message, you can put the phone down. You don't have to keep going back, right? In my 3rd ceremony, I was actually transported into my DNA. I could see my DNA uncoil. And I had numbers and pictures and symbols and all this information coming at me. I was inside a cell, and I could see the cell exploding with light. So that was like, I mean, you're talking about wobbly legs. There's nothing quite like seeing all of this with your eyes open trying to make your way to the outhouse, as you say, tripping balls, trying to figure out like what is real reality. Like, is this physical? You know what I mean? But I just wanted to share that. So,
I think it's important to say that you don't need to have plant medicines to experience these things. I don't want people to think that that's the only way, because you can go inside the cell and have the flashes of light and move through the cosmos and have the most profound, unbelievable, insightful experiences, and you don't need plant medicine to get that. And the reason is because plant medicine triggers within you or gives you something that is the same as or similar to dimethyltryptamine, DMT.
Yeah.
We have this in our pineal gland naturally and within our DNA. So when we create it through magical acts, spiritual discipline, Merkaba work, Kundalini, the 9 tell me we flood our body with DMT. So that's what it means to be higher than. You get a double acceleration. If you're already full of DMT, you don't want to take a whole load more. That's burnout. That's too much and too fast. I just think it's important. I don't want people to think that the only way to have these wonderful spiritual experiences is through plant medicine. It's simply one tool of many.
Right. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to, we don't want to make it wrong for those that choose, because like you, Magenta, I never had the gifts that you had on board from very young. Like, I don't have the ability to touch somebody beside me and feel what they feel or move into their experience. So for me, I chose to do that because I wanted to look at whatever I had on board so that I could embody as much light as possible.
I understand, but for someone like me, it would be soul destroying.
Oh, totally. Yeah. You're absolutely right, because
bring the perspective in, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, because the guides that I work with too have said that it's not for everyone.
Absolutely not.
Chemistry, no. They won't come back from it. Like, they won't come back to this reality, and they'll remain scrambled.
It can be extremely destructive or extremely creative, just like anything, and you will have an extreme of both. So if it's good for you, it's going to be amazing. If it's bad for you, it's going to be totally awful. You have to know where you are in your own spiritual journey. So really, for me, I would say it's for people who don't have a balanced, aware psychic ability, who are doing Merkaba work, who are channeling. Those people simply don't need plant medicine.
I fully agree, because I had my one plant medicine session in 2010, and the build up to that in the tent was so profound that for me the ayahuasca started working before even drinking it.
Yes.
So that for me was the absolute evidence that if you are going into the space, it already starts. And I started to get a full release of DMT happening. And the other thing is that I know quite a lot of people who now, and I mentioned this in the last roundtable, but I think it's important. Quite a lot of people now, they find they're facing an issue and immediately they book an ayahuasca session. And it's almost like, oh, I have a thing and I need now my ayahuasca to clear it. And it almost is basically saying to your body intelligence, oh, body, you're not intelligent enough to deal with this, so I need this plant medicine. So I'm personally very grateful for the session that I've had, and it was exactly the perfect timing. And the reason why I did it is because it called me, and I needed it at that point 10 years ago. I was misaligning. But I really do believe that it doesn't need to be done on a completely regular basis, especially like Magenta said, once you have had that ping opened up, then you have all the tools in a way to start doing it yourself.
Well, if I may speak as an actual practitioner, somebody who works directly with plant medicines and experiences them, I would say that you definitely can be, I mean, I experience ayahuasca regularly without ever touching ayahuasca. I am always able to be in a plant medicine journey if I want to be, whether or not I have taken the substance at this point, because I'm so familiar with the energy and so familiar with the consciousness, and all it really takes is for me to just meditate on it. Having said that, though, I would also say that I can go into a plant medicine journey and For me, I don't, at this point in time, I don't have wild woolly legs. I don't struggle with, I actually can see, literally see with my eyes more than one reality at a time, and make my way through the different spaces without struggling to, you know, with gravity or any of the earthly things. And so I just want to share my actual real experience with this, because I feel like the energy that in this conversation about the plant medicines is sort of saying that, you know, it's almost like people who are not as awake are the only ones that maybe should take them. I don't know if I'm getting that right or not, but I have to disagree respectfully with that, because but I would say that people are called to plant medicines, and it's not for everyone, for sure. And I also agree that you can be in the energy of a medicine journey, whether or not you have, you know, like Magenta, definitely totally understand your experience of just being able to touch people and help them through and have that journey. And I fully understand that. And also ayahuasca, before, you know, she's always working with you before you even take the medicine. Typically people will say that like 5 to 6 months even before their journey, if they've gone to Peru or something like that, all these things started happening, and they're starting to, you know, experience all of this stuff like way before they even got into the plant medicine journey. So I would just say that I feel like there's a broader work at hand, that the plants are really connecting with us in the sense that we're in an evolution where consciousness is evolving to a point of greater unity. If we can all agree on that, then what the plants are showing me and what I'm getting in terms of like the, you know, the psychic feed and the channeling that I have been receiving about it is that we're working together. This is a co-creation, and all of the different consciousness that have always been just sort of waiting for us, you know, to get to this point, are becoming involved in our evolution and becoming involved in our growth. And so when I feel that the medicine calls to people, it's like, it may touch this one person, or it may call this one person, but it's going to affect their entire community. It's going to affect everything that's around them, their whole environment, all the people around them, everything, because the energy is going to be coming through them. And even people who are just researching or just studying or just talking to people about those, the plants are working with all of those people and all of those different elements and energies to create the environment and to increase the availability of connectivity in the environment with our consciousness, so that we can connect to more of the divine nature and more of the consciousness as we grow and evolve, because that's what they show me we're evolving towards, is a greater point of unity. And that's, you know, the divine feminine rising is a part of that, because we've been subdued by a construct, but now that construct, the lessons of that construct are completing or have been completed. And so we're now moving out of that construct and we're growing. And what I see, at least for me and my experience with plant medicines, is that they are with us. They're a co-consciousness that lives here on this planet. They have their own community, their own everything. They do the same things that we do, but it's in so much of a slower frame of reference that we don't recognize or notice that they're having the same types of experiences and communicating with each other and growing and changing. And so from my perspective, it's a connection of, you know, we are plant and animal in this framework here. And so connecting that, have already been working on our animal nature. We already work with a lot of animals. We have pets, we have zoos, we do a lot of this work. And now we're moving into connectivity with the plants, with having an understanding, with connecting with that consciousness, and it's broadening our ability to see and to perceive and to understand. And so regardless of whether it's like small pockets of people just doing plant medicines, or maybe people like there are people who are doing it, you could say, the wrong way, but the universe is allowing that to happen for a reason. And that's what I understand. And so when people are called and they do journey, and I honestly, with your pain and stuff that you talked about, I really feel that does happen to people sometimes, and it can be that maybe is your message to stop, that you don't need anymore. You don't need to go further into that journey. And I fully respect and understand that. There's one person that I work with frequently who struggles with breathing. But what we've come to recently is that they've realized that their struggle with breathing and the medicine is connected to an anxiety issue that they have. And it's triggering that anxiety issue. So it's just like a pushback every time they get up to that part. And so we're working on the outside of the medicine to release that anxiety issue and to dig deep into that trigger so that we can break it up. And then, the plants can come in and help to like ease open that space. And so this medicine to me, it's like its own apothecary. It's a doctorship of the universe that we have access to. And again, like I can sit in a plant medicine journey. I don't even drink very much ayahuasca. I drink probably an eighth of what most people drink. And I'm in the journey within minutes of that. And I think that it's just all about connecting consciousness. So, and that DMT production, I do think it can get really overwhelming. But at the same time, it's definitely helping the collective as far as I can understand it. And I know it's not for everyone. I know there's people who are, my sister tells me the same thing, Magenta, that you said. She's just like, I just feel so connected. It'd be way too much for my feed. And I'm like, I totally get that. I respect that 100%. But I also want to just note that it doesn't make anybody less than anybody else, we all have our own work and our own path in this journey of evolution. And as far as the plants are concerned, I love them. Plants and me are, I just love them. We're together, and I work with all kinds of plants, not just ayahuasca, not just entheogens, but my whole life is structured around plants, and everything I do to heal and everything, we go to the plants first. We use the plants for everything. So that's where I'm coming from as far as, working with this medicine.
Violet,
go ahead, Nirvana. I want to jump in too.
I relate to your connection to plants. Tara, already we've had quite a few conversations, and I think Paula also knows that I'm very connected to my garden and growing my own medicine. Mm-hmm. And so I gathered a whole lot of people last weekend to come to my garden so that they could forage and so that I could teach them how to make medicine out of my garden. Yes. And literally go and pick the leaves and cut the things and whatever I had to create this huge jar of medicine that protects the immune system, the lungs, and is just the most magical. But there's more to it. I've just got something now, is that there was more to it for me. There was the cutting of it, there was the preparing of it, there was the energy of the passion and the love that I have to share this medicine, which has nothing to do with psychedelic. It's literally, just medicine out of my garden. So there is so many ways that we can use plants in a natural way that can help the entire body in so many levels. And that is something that I'm really, really passionate about.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. Yes, I absolutely, just the whole network of plants. It's not just, when we overly focus on one thing, I think we become unbalanced, and that's where I don't want it to go with ayahuasca and mushroom and all that stuff. Like you were saying, I think Tara, you were saying that, or maybe it was the iconic media. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting.
Chrissy.
But when people have an issue and then they just automatically go book a session, it's not an aspirin. No. It's like going to see a therapist, and you would be prepared for that. You would be ready to do your work. You'd be ready to look at yourself. You'd be ready to put it all out on the table and face your fears and all of those things. Taking an aspirin is a completely different type of situation.
Can I just address the comment about being more awake? It's not about, if you're more awake, you don't need plant medicine, and if you're not so awake, then that's for you. It's not like that. for me personally, and I know there are many starseeds out there that are the same, I went through a lifetime, which I have memories of, where plant medicine was my tool for spiritual awakening.
Mhm.
And I took it throughout that lifetime, and I taught others. So your journey in this lifetime, Violet, is to be a master with the plants. You're a plant master. You're completely intertwined with them, and it's your journey, it's your mission. And that's what I went through in my previous life. So it was peyote, actually. I actually remember the plant. So everything you are saying, I completely agree with. What I'm saying is that it's not about being more awake than, it's in this particular incarnation, there is such a thing as Stargate Ascension, which is an accelerated form of ascension. And you need, if you are a leader, or you are someone who wants to be what the Nine call a dragon rider, somebody who's taking others through Stargate Ascension, you must make sure that DNA activation occurs in a steady way. If you power it up too fast, you can get burnt out.
Mhm.
So for those people, and they will probably be people who've gone through this before in other lifetimes like me, because plant medicine will come to all souls at some point, because none of us are incarnated. Well, the babies are now, that are being born now, and probably the last sort of 6-7 years, the babies are already born with that higher DNA configuration. So it's not being more awake, but it is having that DNA configuration that's specific to moving through Stargate Ascension. Those people will find that they've already done the plant journey in other lifetimes. It won't be right for them because they are using that DMT naturally and finding other ways and other tools. We each have a different journey. So you can have people who are very awake and very, very connected doing plant medicines, absolutely. And as you say, it's not just about psychedelics, it's about cacao and rose and all the other beautiful plants. And I'm growing plants in my garden. So it's extremely important. And the mushrooms, it's very important to say that they come in with this doppelganger DNA, which is like, if you need some kind of backup with the memory system, the mushrooms have that, and many of the other plant medicines do in different ways. So I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, but I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here and making sure that people don't get the idea that the way forward, the way to ascension and enlightenment and beautiful, wonderful experiences of unity and connectivity is to be found through plant medicine and plant medicine alone, because there are other individuals here who are not more awake, but they do have a DNA configuration for Stargate Ascension, which is going to give them more access to DMT. So they will go through this burnout if they bring in these sort of double accelerants. They've already got an accelerant in their body. So I'm just sort of coming in with the other perspective. But as I said, I went through a past life very much where you are now as someone working as a plant master, and I was male in that lifetime, and I absolutely remember. And I know that other starseeds have been through this as well, especially if they've incarnated into indigenous tribal communities in the past. They will almost undoubtedly have come across plant medicines in that lifetime, so they will come in this time with the memories, and they don't need to go through that particular experience. So that's all I'm saying. But I honor the plants just as much as you do.
Yeah, thank you so much for that explanation. I really don't have any contentions with what you're saying. I think I just wanted to maybe point out, I was feeling something and I wanted to speak on that. And to be honest with you, I have a lot of memories of past lives where I've done this. So I don't know if I just have a different kind of mission or whatever it is, and I'm not even questioning that, because I know I'm on my path, and I know that what you're saying is right as well. You know what I mean? There are so many ways to get there, and so many ways to look at the truth, and so many ways to experience, and everyone has a journey, and everyone has a trajectory. And I definitely don't have any contentions about that at all. And like, I think it was interesting, I just thought, when you were talking about your past lives, because that was one of the things that actually got me into doing the work more and more because I started having a lot of flashbacks of multiple lifetimes where I was doing this work. But one of the things that was really coming through about that for me was that the work is not being done. There's a certain way it's being done that is taking people off track.
I agree, and you've got it right. You're in alignment with it, and we need the plant masters because it is one journey that many will choose to take. But as long as people realize it's just one, but I can see that you're doing it in an aligned way, and I can see that it's your mission. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I would like to jump in there. So I was actually had a lot of mixed feelings about this being a subject that we were going to speak on, because I have done it in the past myself, and as someone who's a starseed and is very accelerated, it shattered me. And it was actually could have been one of the most terrible decisions I ever made. It was perfect, but in the sense that during the ceremony, I became very aware that I was not like everyone else in the ceremony, in the sense that I was a starseed and I was galactic, and my experience was completely different than everyone was freaking out and screaming and rolling around. And I was just like, I knew exactly how to go right back to the planet that I came from, and that's what I did. Problem was that I didn't fully come back into my body. And because of that, other things, when I left my body, came into my body. Now, this is what's my lesson to begin with, but I'm sharing this because this was and is now, I help a lot of clients who have been scattered and shattered through these experiences. They find me, and of course, I'm sure I had to have that experience to understand it. And as a beautiful thing is, Source led me to a woman. I actually had to leave Costa Rica immediately and fly home, because after the ceremony, I was so shattered that even though I wasn't having those types of experiences during the ceremony, for the next week after the ceremony, I would be shape-shifting so much that in the midst of just normal day, I would literally see myself turn into an animal, or see the entire room disappear. And now there's aspects of that that are really cool, but it was getting to a point where it was like, this is not balanced. And I knew that something had happened. And so I was guided to work with a healer at home. And she was like, oh my God, Nina, I can't even believe this. And she helped me. I had to call all my pieces back in, and I had to want to come back in. And that was part of the lesson, was I didn't want to fully come back. I had connected to my family, to Source, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm done. And so I had to use my voice like a siren to call myself back in. And when I came back into myself, I burst into tears, and I was like, I'll never do this to you again. It was like I had lost my baby. I was holding my baby. And so this is very sensitive subject for me, because now I help a lot of other star seeds and sensitives that have been walking for years, 10 or more, completely shattered, completely scattered. And it did more trauma to them than it did positivity in my personal experience. The other thing that I want to speak to is that there's a lot of shamans that are using this in a very dark manner. And one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of is women who have gone into these ceremonies, and the shaman has hooked their energy into their womb. This is very real. They come back home, or they're dealing with sicknesses and diseases they never had. They're dealing with almost like someone's trying to invade into their relationship. So, and this happens to men too, but it's very, very important that if you're going to do this, you do it with someone who you can absolutely trust to hold space, because that was the other part of it, was when I did this in ceremony, I did it with a shaman that was very interested in being more like a rock star. I'm not going to say his name, but he was not holding space in a container. And I did it with way too many people. I had no idea what I was in for. It was so damaging. So masters, you have to go to a master. And the other part that I see is, I have friends that they're not able to graduate this experience. They've been doing this over and over for 25 years. This is what they think is their ascension. And I think that it's very important that none of us are depending on anything outside of us, whether it be ayahuasca or another person, right? You're giving your power away. If you've gotten married to that plant in the sense that this is now what I give my power to, you're not going to ascend because you're completely not being sovereign. And this awakening is about total sovereignty.
Yeah.
And as far as those that have accelerated, Magenta, I'm so grateful that you said what you said, because you helped me understand myself on an entirely new level. I can't even eat chocolate anymore. I'm so accelerated.
Yeah.
I can't do caffeine. It's like, it's scary. I start getting scattered and leaving my body. So yeah, we all really need to honor the paths that we're on. And I from my heart, I really needed to say that, because when I work with clients now, I'm so careful when they're like, well, maybe I should just go do ayahuasca. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. Be very cautious, because you're a starseed, and that could really cause more of a psychotic experience, like almost a psychotic break for you, where you can't function anymore. And so, yeah, I think all of these aspects are very important to speak to.
Chrissy, thank you, Nina.
Thank you so much, Nina, for that. And do I understand it correctly, Violet, that what Nina is speaking about, that could have been prevented had she been with a shaman who can see what's going on?
That I did actually want to mention that, and it's making me I'm really appreciating what Magenta and Nina have given to this conversation, because it's making me think about my process of screening people for medicine work, and wanting to like ask a few more questions maybe about star seeds and find out where people are, because I do agree, Chrissy, that and that's maybe why I really am doing this work right now, because I just see a lot of errors and a lot of people hurting other people because they want to be a superstar, they want to be someone that everyone looks up to, or they found themselves feeling better and they want to maybe share that with people, but aren't really taking the time to understand the work or the medicine, and not being able to create the right types of containers. Because in my understanding and experience, the container is so incredibly important that if you don't have a good container, all kinds of nasty things can happen. And whether you're a starseed or not, I think that it's very damaging to people. But if you are a starseed, and if you are at that level of sensitivity, like I know I would never give ayahuasca to my sister, because she's like you, Nina, and like you, Magenta. She can't eat chocolate. She can't have caffeine. She goes haywire. And she doesn't, all I have to do is talk to her about something like this. Or if she could hold my hand and connect to me, and she could go there with me. But and so I would, and I do screen people to make sure that they aren't over, it's too much. There's too much feed. And like you said, you're just already so tapped in and so connected. Me personally, I think in my life, like I had a lot of physical abuse and trauma, and it sort of deadened. I was always disassociating when I was younger. And so I was out of my body a lot. And so my consciousness was really, really easily able to connect and fly like anywhere in the universe. I was very easily able to go into different dimensions. And when I found out how to do out of body experiences, I was like, oh, this is so easy. Like I can do this. But the problem for me personally was that my body, like just the actual body of myself, I was struggling to communicate with and to work with. And that's, I think, why plant medicines are very good for me, or have worked well for me, because that my consciousness may be like hot wired, but my body was not following, because it was just kind of like deadened by a lot of the things that had happened. So I really do think, Chrissy, your point, Nina, your point, the container is super important. The call is super important. I think people that get called, it's different than being curious, and you have to screen that out of people. I also think that if the shaman was paying attention to you, Nina, I just doubt that you got the right dose of medicine or the right treatment, because I feel that, I mean, even, I understand that you probably wouldn't even want to have done it in the first place. But if I was that shaman, I may not even have wanted you to take it, if that makes sense. Like you might have just needed to just sit, or, what I mean, and be around. That might have been the extent of that call for you. But it's really the application of the medicine is what concerns me the most as a medicine worker. and what I see going wrong in a lot of other spaces, the container and the treatment. So if that helps any.
You sound amazing, Violet. I get a very safe feeling around you, and a real love and attention for everything. So it's like, I think people are very lucky if they end up in ceremony with you.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, because like for me, I only need a little bit. Right? I've only done 10, and I can tell you, I don't need to do it again. It's gifted me with everything that I was looking for. It's opened me up. One thing I can share is my meditations, my dreams. So it's like my whole spiritual family knew that I was embarking on the ayahuasca journey, and everything was supporting my own awakening and my own reconciliation with my behavior, why I would act this way. I was sharing at the beginning of this, I was actually shown in the last ceremony, the third of the last 5. So I guess that'd be 3, 5, 6, 7. That would be the 8th one. I was shown something had happened in the day. Actually, there was a friend there that was with me. We had got some goddess. We do sacred plant bath before we begin. And it kind of felt like Cleopatra. We would wait for that to evaporate, and so the shamans had brought some perfume to that effect. And my friend was struggling with the bottle. She couldn't get it open. I said, it's okay, just relax. But that triggered her, that word, it's okay, triggered her. This is before the ceremony. And she went back to the cabin, and I was talking to the gal, her name was Carolyn, actually, she's in Nova Scotia, who facilitated our group. And I was talking to her, and I started to cry. And I said, oh, this is really interesting. I'm emotional. I wonder what's going to come up tonight in ceremony. And I was actually shown another lifetime where I was working for or with like a priest or somebody who had a lot of power. And I was like their seer. And I would distort the information because he was very cruel to the people. To give the people a chance or what have you. And he found out. And in this ceremony, I was beaten. I was barbed wire beaten. I had something put in my mouth. Again, the speaking up, right? I was talking about being a baby, right? When I was crying, my mom wouldn't, the name of being, Paula the baller. And so I was bound and gagged and beaten, left for dead. And there was this presence there who somehow I was just lifted through the light of love. And I was brought to this incredible blue sapphire dragon. And I had all these animals coming to visit me. An elephant, a tiger, a cockroach. Like, it was the most beautiful thing. And by the morning, all of the physical injuries had healed completely. But now I could understand why I was always afraid of speaking out, because I might get beaten if I say something, like past life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was an incredible healing, an incredible understanding as to how I operate in the world and how I get frustrated when I'm not heard or told, stop it, be quiet. You're not being the way I want you to be. To Chrissy's point, stop being so aggressive. Being bossy boots kind of thing.
Yes.
So that was, for me, it was an incredible gift. Do I feel I want to do it again? Absolutely not, because it tastes terrible. And I have, like Magenta said, it's now opened up. I was hoping, because I had a direct experience with Jesus. And the very last one, I think I shared with before, it was all about darkness, and there were so many beings coming to find all of those that were lost in the darkness. And it allowed me to claim my own sovereignty as a divine being. And I turned away from the synthetic and went to the real. So for me, I'm so grateful.
Yeah, that's so amazing, Paula. I just got chills all over me when you were telling about your story and your healing and that experience. And I only just wanted to say, I know that somebody else wanted to say something too, but I just wanted to say that I do not go into every single journey with complete ease of like, it's an interesting thing, because as far as like what Nina was saying, being married to the medicine and that type of thing, I almost feel like that would be hard for me, because I have to actually make that relation. It's like a relationship, you know, I have to make that relationship happen every single time I go into it, and I have to be very ready and prepared. And I think that the work for me is not always necessarily easy, I guess. But I do it because, again, like I said, I see a lot of things happening, and I really want to be a part of having safe space for the medicine in the West, because I see a lot of that of unsafe spaces out there. And I want people to have the ability to have those types of healings that you had, and to be able to help them if they don't need it, or maybe send them to somebody else, you know, like Nina or like Magenta, if they are a starseed or somebody who is maybe needing something different. I just want to be able to facilitate that type of activity with people more and more, so that people can be safe and grow in a safe trajectory.
And that is why one of your beloved followers reached out to me and introduced me to you, which I'm so grateful you've joined us today, because now they can find you. They can find a female shaman in integrity that can hold a safe space, or they can journey on their own in perfect ways. So bless you for joining us and sharing your wisdom. So that's the point of. Go ahead, Tara.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. I mean, as soon as you did your introduction, Violet, I wanted to just jump in, because it all had crystals on it. It was really clear and really pure, and I really heard what you were saying about, you know, the plants. I mean, a few weeks ago we were with a lady who connects with elementals. Well, my internet's a bit funny. And it's like, yeah, there's the elemental realm, there's the spirit realm, there's the angel realm, and there's the plant realms, all these different realms of life. And it's so wonderful to have you here speaking for the realm of the plants. And like my sisters here, many lifetimes working with plants as a medicine woman, over and over again, in lots of different, you know, one in Peru 4 lifetimes, and in, you know, Native America, all kinds of different places. So it's really beautiful. And I really am loving this conversation, because a little bit like you, Nina, I was like, oh, plant medicine. I've got mixed feelings about that. As a soul reader, me too. I've had lots of clients come to me and they look like one of those old telephone exchange, you know, switchboard. I'm like seeing like the switchboard operator, where all the plugs and all the wires are in the wrong holes and connecting their brains up all wrong. And they're opening holes in their auric field. They're having 4th dimensional beings coming in and taking over them, and all kinds of yucky, horrific things. And they are really in a bad state. And so I really love that everything has been spoken out about this, that's been on my heart. And I really love, Violet, that you're here giving a crystal clear, pure voice and a container for that as well, so that we have all of this knowledge and information. And for what I love to bring to this conversation is broadening the context of medicine, because it's plant medicine.
Right.
And if we think about, like, my mother was a homeopath, and many other doctors, many other herbalists, many other, you know, you don't just immediately go in just because you want to see the doctor and you want that medicine and say, can I have it? And they give it to you and they put it in your mouth and then off you go. No, there's like, you have to go through the diagnosis. You have to go through the session first. And there's certain ways of delivering medicines. Like my mum, you know, for instance, in homeopathy, there are very, very toxic poisons that are delivered in a homeopathic dose, like belladonna, for example, or arsenic. You know, and it has to be just the right thing at just the right time, with just exactly that vibrational match. We were talking about it earlier with the vibrational matches, and that medicine has to be the right vibrational match for the person at that time for it to be medicine. And the container for that, where you're really making sure that the preparation is done, like you said, preparation is everything. That creating that crucible for the transformation, creating that safe container, creating that bond and understanding is absolutely crucial. And if anything, you know, and the taking the medicine is like the middle part, and then how that's cared for and nurtured on the other side as well.
Yes.
Like creating that whole container and that whole follow through experience is absolutely crucial. Now, if we look at our medicine society and where people go for their medicine these days, you know, it's the pharmacy. There is not a vibrational match. It is synthetic, and a lot of them are actually poisons. There's formaldehyde and mercury and God knows what else, you know, baby fetuses, all kinds of horrific things that are super toxic and poisonous to human beings and to the water and to plants and to all of life, being dressed up and labeled as medicines for people to take for their ailments. There's no container around that. There's no proper diagnosis and understanding of the true ailment, of what truly needs treating with that human being. There's zero consciousness around that. And in fact, you could even say there's an alter, agenda or something for that. But if we think about, you know, a person's experience, like say of a plant medicine, you know, taking too much of it. I was a big pot smoker when I was a teenager. I started at a young age. I just wanted to get out of my box, you know, and I overdosed on it. I stopped seeing it as a medicine. I had no idea at that time it was a medicine. My parents dropped acid and took mushrooms and God knows what else in the 60s. What an incredible medicine that was, because it's given us, you know, more awakening now. But it's like the consciousness around how to take that medicine and the awareness that it is a medicine. And like, you know, you guys were saying, it's not becoming a lifelong habit and a crutch to actually stop your personal development, to stop your conscious awareness, which it can also be used as. Just as belladonna can really poison you or it can cure you, just like ayahuasca can really help you or really mess you up. And so the container in which you do it is really important. And if there's this argument, if you like, around whether plant medicine is good or not, could we deliver that also? Could we open that conversation to our, you know, normal orthodox medicine and go, look at the damage this shit is doing in comparison to what these natural plants, even if we misuse them or mishandle them or overdose on them, the damage from my eyes that's being done on all levels, psychiatric level, you know, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual level, with orthodox medicine, to me is absolutely barbaric and horrific and definitely needs some consciousness. And so comparatively, I would say plant medicine definitely, you know, or look at alternative medicines, full stop. One more thing I just want to add is that as a soul reader, definitely having seen people and through ayahuasca and these experiences, it seems to be very, very common. And I've in fact seen it in every one of my clients. That's probably why they've sought me out. Because like what you said, Nina, the person holding the ceremony or holding the space, calling themselves a shaman, I actually hear these words, shame man, like shame on you. Because what I've seen 100% of the time so far is that the shaman, and this isn't true for everybody, this is the clients that I've seen, is that the shaman has tapped in, and I've seen it largely tapped into the back of the solar plexus, or into the front of the solar plexus, and largely it is at the back because then it's not seen, it's shadow. It's a hidden, absolute drain of power, so that shaman gets to look like the whole guru, aren't I amazing? And they're full of light and they're full of power, but they're hiding their own shadow, which, as you said earlier, where there's light, there will be shadow. And you can bring your shadow consciously, like Chrissy was talking about earlier, and saying, yeah, here's my shadow, I'm a whatever. Or you can be just masking it and faking it to be some shaman. And, you know, that's there's a lot of people doing that. And so Violet, I'm really, really pleased to meet you. And so that perhaps people, through seeing you, they can have a bit of a measuring stick and go, this gentle, caretaking, conscious woman who is experienced. You didn't do a shaman course overnight and do it for a weekend and then announce yourself, or take a couple of doses of ayahuasca and say, da-da, I'm going to hold my own ceremony. You've clearly done it lifetime after lifetime. You're embedded in it. It's who you are. And you have the mastery, you have the skill. And I hope people can actually use their own ability to discern and feel, and also to caretake themselves through that and not give their power away to somebody else or to the plant or anything, but to consciously say, I am preparing myself for this, and make sure that I'm cared for during and after, and not abandon myself. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
You bring up such a huge point, because it actually just triggered a memory. Because the first time I did it, I was north of Iquitos, 8 hours north of Iquitos, and it was with a different group, and I won't mention who either. But they were going on after the ayahuasca, the 5 ceremonies there, to go to Machu Picchu and do San Pedro. And it was brought to our attention that they did not get permission from the elders. So he was doing it without permission, so not honoring the plant, right? Mm-hmm. And we were having breakfast, and I just said, well, if you're out of integrity, the universe is gonna, the universe will come right back at you, kind of thing. And I was halfway home, and as I say, I'm a newbie, right? I'm relatively new. I was halfway home, and the individual that led the group wrote me an email and accused me of putting a spear dagger through his heart, her heart, and being gender neutral, because the individual could not physically go to do the ceremony because the universe put his back out, and he wasn't actually able to do it, but accused me, wrote me an email, a big, huge, long email, on how I had just been activated and I had all these skills, and I was working in the darkness. And when I read this email, I was mortified, right? And immediately I went within, and I'm like, am I possible at this? Am I capable of doing this? And it was no. And it turned out to be that individual's lesson by accusing me of doing something completely inappropriate. But it was that individual. So again, wonderful to have Violet here, because without a master in the plant ceremony, even if I believed that, I could have been set way back in my own journey and in my healing. But thank God I had the wherewithal to go inside and check to see, is this even true? Am I capable of this? And it was a clear no. Go, Chrissy.
I am so happy with this conversation, because this is the kind of conversation that is needed around this subject. Again, because often you only have 2 camps. This is the camp that says this, and this is what says. I'm hearing all colors being represented here in this conversation, and this is so important for people considering the different healing modalities that they can choose. And it's very informative. I'm really loving hearing everyone speak about it.
I also just wanted to talk about I've been actually a bit horrified lately, because I've had a lot of clients come recently who have implants that happened during those ceremonies, and they had believed that these were benevolent ETs. And by the way, no benevolent ETs are going to put implants in you or tell you that you're the queen of this or the king of that and put this implant in you. I don't care how beautifully they show up. You need to understand that they're taking away your sovereignty. And these people were just completely bought and sold that they were taken on this ship, and they're actually this queen of this for these, and now they're working for them. And I was like, so I think it's really important as well that people understand that when you're in a ceremony and these entities are interacting with you, you really need to be careful, because oftentimes what glitters is not gold. Yes. And in my personal experience, there's a lot of dark astral energies that are taking advantage of these open to come in and to fulfill their agenda, to harness their energy to another who is then serving them without even realizing it afterwards. And this can go on for years and years. Mm-hmm. So just huge caution there.
Yeah, Nina, that's an absolutely, I just feel like that's very crucial. It's a crucial factor. And it's something that, again, why I really push myself into this work, because I see that happening. I see where containers that are being set up are perforated, other energies are coming in. But what I want to say about that is that what you do to create a container where energies are not going to, because when you're doing a ceremony and you've got, I mean, I don't like the ones where people are doing like huge, you know, they've got 30, 40, 50, that's just insane to me. But the giant groups of people, it's like this big beacon on the earth that's just like lighting up, and it's like, here, come here, like all the energies and all the spirits and anything that wants to feed on us, you know, is pretty much, it's like a big beacon that, you know, can call. So you need to, again, that container is so especially important, and you can set up the container, but once you have set it up, they're still going to try to attack it. And so that's why within the journey, it's vitally important that you have like you need to have a consistent level of energy up the entire time. And I think that when you're in the medicine, if you're not very well versed in the medicine, if you're not very like balanced or on your feet in the medicine, you can get off track, and you can let that guard down, but that has to actually be maintained the entire time. And I even will talk to people, I'll stop the music and have a quiet space, but then I'll talk to people in there, and I'll remind people that their light is stronger than the darkness, that how they can face their fears. I want people to know that, you know, flattery is not, the beings that have your best interest at heart will not flatter you. I always tell people that. Be aware of flattery, because that is the #1 flag for me, where it's just like, oh no, you got to go. And, you know, I just think it's very important to be, people are not educated about these things at all. They're just going in so blindly, not realizing, not even knowing about their energy bodies, not knowing about perforations, not knowing about the container and the vibrations. But the vibrations, the singing that I do, the music is very, very important. The words, the small amount of quiet space here and there, but to like, not too much of it is the thing. Sometimes people will leave a lot of room for that stuff to start come, for people to just start, you know, all of that stuff. You just cannot let that happen in a ceremony. It's such intense medicine. And so, I mean, I think that's really, really important. And all of you, thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like it has broadened me to be able to recognize more things within the people who are coming to me for ceremony, and to be able to screen them better, to refer people if they need to be referred elsewhere, and to just, you know, take some more things into account. But I'm just really, really appreciating this discussion.
I know that we got two hands up, but we do have folks that have to go. So if it's really quick, Chrissy, and then Nirvana, and then we'll wrap it up.
Just a little conclusion, like the thing I love the most about ayahuasca is how it was showing me the delusions, and how it was lifting the veil on that. And that was so helpful, you know, to really realign so swiftly. And the things that I thought were right, and it was just showing me it was just a total mind construct of mine. And I was really blown away by the intelligence of this plant, and the intelligence of the highs and lows throughout the journey. You know, when it needed to be high, it was high, and when it was like super low and I couldn't handle it anymore, it would go back up. It was so divinely intelligent. So I really feel that if it's right to do the plant, and you're with the right shaman in the right environment, the divinity of it really really happened.
Yes, I want to end off with a little bit of a comic relief. I wish that sometimes my family could take a journey with some of this plant medicine, so that they could know what I know, just for one, like even if it's just for 2 minutes, just to see or to know the things that I know. I just wanted to add that.
Wonderful, thank you. So to wrap it up, lovelies, oh my goodness, what a fantastic conversation. Those that are listening, we are in the purge. Love it free. Shine your light on everything, even the darkest shit that you see. Shine your light. We don't have to ask questions sometimes, as the beloved Carrie Kay mentions. You just need to flush it. You don't need to know what the poop is. And she's going to be joining us next time, and we're going galactic. So please do join us.
Love her.
Glorious hearts. Love yourself and love others. I'm going to stop recording now, and we'll chat soon.